Joining us now on the Megacast as hot debate continues to happen across the nation about the validity of trans youth and adults participating in sporting events in their identified gender category is the Executive Director of Stand With Trans, Roz Keith. Roz, appreciate you joining us again.
Good morning. Nice to see you again, Tyler.
Nice to see you as well. For those that have not joined us previously when we've had you on the program, can you tell us about Stand With Trans and what your organization does to support trans youth and adults throughout the state of Michigan?
I'd be happy to. Very simply, our mission is to empower and support transgender youth and their loved ones. And that means we are there for them to provide peer support, programming, education. Education is a big one for us. We really feel like the more people know, the better equipped they are to support their family members, support their friends, their community members. So we do a lot around education. We're actually just getting started on building out the resources to have a lifeline library on our website, which will be an aggregate of a number of resources in any topic imaginable related to trans folks, whether it's coming out socially, medically, how to come out, how to access care, how to get letters written, name change. It'll run the gamut. So we're pretty excited about that. That was just funded by the Hope Fund from the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan.
And so, Roz, as you talk about education, there's so much debate lately about what education on gender identity, on sexuality, and more should be taught in schools. There's even been legislation proposed to severely restrict discussions on those topics, on that subject matter with kids in our schools. Michigan legislatures, this is from a Bridge, Michigan article, a great article on some trans issues here in the state of Michigan, particularly as it pertains to trans youth and adults playing in sports. But this is related to education. Michigan legislatures have introduced legislation that in some ways models legislation that's already been proposed in Florida, in particular the Parents' Rights in Education law that would prohibit any instruction related to sexual orientation, to gender identity, and similar topics for any child below the 4th grade age. And so from your perspective as the mother of someone who is trans, as someone that works in a trans organization that's helping so many people in this community navigate a very complicated and unfortunately very unfriendly world to them at this time, why is that educational element, talking about gender identity, talking about these sorts of issues, sexual orientation, and more, why is that important, even at a young age, to get those concepts out in the community to these children so they understand the world around them?
It's a great question. It's super important because just as schools talk about, have health curriculum, and they talk about, biology, they talk about, once the kids get older, it's probably like middle school, 6th to 8th grade, they talk about puberty. And so this is all part of someone's health. And we know that there is more than one way to identify. There is more than one way to have an intimate relationship with a partner. And kids aren't too young to understand that some kids have 2 moms, some kids have 2 dads, every family looks different. And when kids are only taught, as they get older and they're taught in health class about reproduction, and they're only talking, and yes, there's one way to make a baby. You need a uterus and you need sperm, but that doesn't have to come from 2 partners necessarily. There are other ways to have a family. And so, or to bring a life into the world. And when kids are taught that there is only one way to be in an intimate relationship, and they don't have those feelings, they start to feel shame. And when you impose shame on children, all kinds of outcomes are likely, from anxiety to depression, withdrawing from their communities, withdrawing from their friends, from their families, because they feel like being different is wrong. So, we could talk an hour just about on that question, but there are so many reasons why things should be taught at age appropriate languages, and in an age appropriate way. It's just like, if your 5 year old comes to you and says, you know, how are babies made? You're going to give them a response that would be appropriate of a 5 year old. And that would be the same in a classroom.
Yeah, you're teaching these concepts because they're part of the world that we live in, like any other thing they're teaching in school. And of course, that's going to be at the discretion of educators to decide when it's appropriate to talk about certain elements of that subject matter versus others. And in this case, I want to give you, Roz, an opportunity to respond to some of the comments from one of our state legislatures who co-sponsored this bill that was modeled off of the Parents' Rights and Education Law from Florida, and that is Representative Steve Cara of Three Rivers, a Republican who co-sponsored the bill. He said that teaching children about sexual orientation and gender identity, calling it terrible, and saying that it causes students, quote, awful confusion and perversion. Can you speak on that? And what is your reaction to hearing that kind of rhetoric from one of our political leaders?
Yeah. So it has this argument of perversion and that trans people are pedophiles, and um, conversation surrounding those topics has been going on for quite some time, and it's just simply not true. Um, they are less likely to be the ones, harassing your child in a public restroom, for example. Um, but again, it is important for children to get educated. We don't want them going to um, the internet, to porn sites, I mean, we have so much access at our fingertips because of Google. So a lot of that's going to happen anyway. But by talking about it in school, your kids are much more likely to come home and ask about it. And it's important for parents to be open and to be able to have those conversations because, again, if you shut them down, they're going to look elsewhere. And also, parents feel like by talking about it, oh, well, maybe it means that my kids are going to be so curious if we talk about it that their behavior is going to be reckless and there's going to be unwanted outcomes. And it's really just the opposite. Kids do listen, and we can talk about things in a healthy way and understand, that there are different genders and there are different sexual orientations, and people have all different kinds of relationships. And our bodies develop a certain way because of hormones. I mean, they can understand all of that. So, to say it's a perversion, it's an uninformed comment, and it's not going to cause kids to go out and do things that perhaps they otherwise wouldn't do. It's going to let them know that they're okay, and that's what we want, right? We want to let kids know that whoever they are, it's okay, and it's okay to be different and to have, we all aren't made the same.
And just to editorialize a little bit, yeah, Representative Cara mentions that it will cause, quote, awful confusion and close quote, to paraphrase that sentence. I would argue that not teaching kids about gender identity, not teaching kids about the existence of a variety of different sexualities, a variety of different gender identities, about gender being more of a spectrum than being a binary male or female would cause more confusion, or even worse, cause more hate, as we've seen it continue to do over the course of time. And that's why, as you mentioned earlier, that education on these issues is so important, if nothing else, than to give people a baseline understanding of what others in their community are living through or are going through in their experiences, so we can create a more welcoming world. We're joined by Roz Keith, the executive director of Stand With Trans, on the Michigan Megacast. More information can be found on standwithtrans.org. That's standwithtrans.org. Another debate throughout the U.S. has been on the participation of trans people within their gender playing sports, whether it be at the professional level, certainly at the youth level and high school level in the state of Michigan and in other places, with the arguments again being very ignorant, being that trans people, particularly trans women, have an advantage over the competition that is assigned their gender at birth and identifies with that assigned birth gender. Can you speak to that and some of the misnomers and the misinformation and the disinformation that's out there regarding the participation of trans athletes within their gender identity in these sports?
Yeah. Um, a, a big problem stems from people believing that your gender is defined by your body parts, which we know is not true. So if you have certain parts, then you're a girl versus certain parts, you're a boy. And that's how you're defined. And that's the team that you should play on. And that's how you should line up. If the teacher says all girls over here, all boys over here. But, you know, that isn't working. And also, those who want to shoot this down believe that even if someone says, well, I'm transgender and I'm female, that it doesn't matter what they say, but if their birth certificate says male, that they were assigned a boy, male at birth, then that's the team that they have to be on. And there are so many adjunct concerns in terms of boys saying that they're girls just to get the scholarships or just to like be in the locker room with girls. It's so ridiculous in my mind. So to me, there are two issues right now. Is one, people should be allowed to participate if they're living as a particular gender and they say, I'm a girl, then we need to believe them. So if they're living that way and they're out socially that way, and this is how they're moving through the world, they should be able to play on the girls' team. Also, which is now a newer issue for discussion, is that by only having girls' teams and boys' teams, what happens to those athletes or those students who are non-binary? And if someone's non-binary, they don't identify as male or female. They're somewhere on the spectrum. They're not, they don't identify with their assigned sex at birth, but they also don't identify with the opposite sex at birth. So by saying, and I know in Ann Arbor right now, they're talking about, co-ed girls teams, and this is elementary school, co-ed boys teams. Well, what does that mean? Co-ed is co-ed, right? It's boys and girls together, but it still doesn't allow for non-binary identified kids. So it becomes very exclusionary. Sports are important. It's a great outlet. It's good for their mental health. It's healthy competition. There's so many good things about participating in sports for young people that we should not have to worry about all of these restrictions being imposed. So that's my 2 cents, but I think that this battle is going to go on for a while. If you look up Skylar Baylor, he was the first trans man. He swam at Harvard. He was like Division I NCAA competitor, and he swam on the men's team. And he's a very outspoken trans influencer, and he's doing a lot of trainings. And he's not, an outcast. He's not. There's nothing perverse about him swimming on the men's team. And these are role models. These are role models for our kids, and we need to support that. So I don't even know how else to respond to that. It really is heartbreaking when kids can't participate. And recently I was at a Pride event and talking with another organization that's providing leadership programs. And they said, well, we have a boys leadership program and we have a girls leadership program. And I said, well, where does that leave the non-binary kids who want to participate? So why don't you just call it a youth leadership program? Like, how different could the programs be? So these are some of the questions that are coming up on a daily basis for those in the community.
You think about topics like leadership and even athletics, they're not really topics that are gender specific or biologically specific. If you really think about it, sports are about competition. You can have competition regardless of an athlete's gender. I've played against athletes of a variety of genders, male, female, non-binary, so on, in basketball, whether it's pickup games or competitively or in other sports. And some of them I've been more competitive against, and others, frankly, they've kicked my ass. And it's all in good fun. It's all in good competition. That's what happens. So, maybe someday we'll end up in a world where we go based on the competition level, not based on things like gender. We're joined by Roz Keith from Stand With Trans, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. More information on standwithtrans.org. I want to give you a few minutes to also be able to talk about some of the resources and some of the upcoming events or other seminars and other resources that may be available to people in the trans community and the LGBTQ plus community, or just in the general community, to learn more about the trans community through your organization coming up, Roz.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. So Sunday the 14th, we have our annual family picnic. If you just go to standwithtrans.org, you can find all the information, sign up. It's family friendly, it's free. It will be in Royal Oak. So we love seeing people come out for that. It's just a great afternoon. We have some fun things planned. Also, that same weekend is Royal Oak Pride. So there'll be a lot going on. I think it's on Washington Street, but it's Friday evening and all day Saturday. So you just show up and have a good time. I know there will be a lot of vendors. There'll be food and activities, and we will be there. We'll be there with our booth, and we're hard to miss because we have a blue and pink Stand With Trans canopy. And then just on our website, if you're looking for a support group, we have tween, teen, parent and caregiver, and young adult groups. Most of them are virtual. We have a couple of in-person going on right now that we've brought back, but most are in person. We have people from all over coming to the groups. You just need to sign up to get the Zoom link because that's the only way we can keep it private. We don't ever post that publicly. The groups are always free to attend, and it's just a great way to get peer support. We also have, there's two new groups, one for parents of older trans folks. So if your kiddo came out at 25, you may not identify with those who are dealing with a tween or a teen. So I have been seeing a lot of signups for that group. And then also we have a young adult trans feminine identified group the first Wednesday of every month. And you can come to the group in person. It's also in Royal Oak, or log in virtually, and it's run by a trans woman who's a leader in the community. And it's just, it's an incredible opportunity for those who are looking for support.
More information, standwithtrans.org, where you can find info on events, programs, resources for families, for individuals, as well as information for ally parents. Also, we're joined by Roz Keith, Executive Director of Stand With Trans on the Michigan Megacast. Roz, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tyler.